This obviously is a fantastic change of tone from the last couple of months, where we've seen a position of pressure being built by the U.S. administration on the Russians, and it sort of takes us back to what we saw in February in the Oval Office when there was that disastrous Oval Office meeting that disintegrated into a shouting match.
Look, we are in all of a spin over Donald Trump's changing of the mind over Ukraine and Russia. He said he doesn't think Ukraine will win back land taken by Russia during the war, despite having suggested this could be possible merely a month ago. The president made the comments while hosting a bilateral meeting with the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
Well, they could. They could still win it. I don't think they will, but they could still win it. I never said they would win it. I said they could win. Anything can happen. You know, war is a very strange thing.
Yeah, it is. Trump doesn't think Ukraine can win. And we hear now that Friday's meeting with Zelensky ended in a shouting match. So there are a few different reports, but we are starting to get details of that meeting. Let's just dive into that first of all, actually, David. What have we learnt over the last 24 hours about what happened in the White House on Friday?
Yeah, we haven't learned anything directly, but we've had indirect reports in various media here in America that, in fact, President Trump was back once again to sounding more like he was speaking from Russian talking points. That Russia was a stronger power, and that they couldn't be beaten. In fact, that they could destroy Ukraine. And this obviously is a fantastic change of tone from the last couple of months, where we've seen a position of pressure being built by the U.S. administration on the Russians, and it sort of takes us back to what we saw in February in the Oval Office when there was that disastrous Oval Office meeting that disintegrated into a shouting match, and President Trump told President Zelensky, "You don't have the cards." In other words, you're not going to win, so you might as well do the deal that we're trying to work out and stop the killing. As I've often said, Trump's motivations are to end the war. However, he does keep changing his tone to apply, and I think this is what is going on. Who knows really what's going on in his mind? But I think what's going on is that he keeps trying to put the pressure on the party that he thinks is the more reluctant. Now, for a long time, he was very friendly towards Putin. Then during the UN General Assembly in September, he made a really stunning change of approach by putting out a post which said that I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to win. Is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form, he said. Well, that was in September. And we might discuss why that happened. But since then, of course, Putin has come around and come back to what Trump believes is meaningful talks. I think his openly musing about sending Ukraine these powerful cruise missiles had a lot to do with that. And following his 2.5-hour phone call last Thursday with President Putin, he's now back to saying what we heard today, that I don't think they will win, is the exact quote. I don't think they will win. And really, we're told in that private meeting, we're told that he was very angrily shouting and cursing at Zelensky, telling him to take the deal from Putin.
Yeah, there's been different interpretations of that meeting. Direct and honest conversation is how one source has described it. A Ukrainian source has called the White House meeting tense, but said there was no shouting. No volatile encounter between the two leaders, but he is said to have sort of bashed away some maps that Zelensky came with. This is what someone familiar with the meeting says. Maps showing current battle lines, hoping to convince Donald Trump to maintain and expand American support. But Trump seemed uninterested in the arguments. I mean, normally it's Trump that likes to have the props, isn't it, David?
Yeah, I mean, even again on Air Force One on Sunday. We are trying to discern exactly where Trump is at the moment.
I don't know
And
where, if he knows where he is, does he? Because
well,
it does change.
On Sunday on Air Force One, he actually had moved from the Russian position, which is Putin said, give us the whole of Donetsk, this large province in the Far East, give us all of that, and we'll move out of these other two provinces where we've taken some chunks out of them. And on Air Force One, he was saying, let's just do it on the battle lines. The easiest and simplest thing is to draw a line now where the front line is, because everything else involves a lot of negotiation.
Yeah,
and
I think it was Donbass,
that was the Ukrainian position. We think that was the Ukrainian position in the White House on Friday. So
yeah.
It's a bit all over the place at the moment. I think what we're seeing perhaps is some frustration from Trump that it's not going his way, and the peace deal that he wanted imminently is not that imminent.
And where does that leave him with his Nobel Peace Prize? I mean, this is eternally difficult for him, but you might argue he's making it even more difficult if he says he's taking a hard line with Putin and then talks to Putin and then seems to be acquiesced by Putin. He looks malleable, and then we're sort of back to where we were quite a few months ago after that White House meeting. Almost, perhaps not quite that bad, but it does. I mean, sometimes I think Donald Trump doesn't do himself any favours unless this is a tactical master plan. David Charter.
Well, of course, he was fronted up on Friday by a reporter who basically said, that are you sure you're not being played by Putin? And Trump said, in that deal-making way of his, well, I've been played by the best of them, and I've come out of it pretty well so far. And he's not wrong. He's a multi-billionaire. He's president of the United States, with a large property empire and a growing not Bitcoin, but a growing an empire.
It is Bitcoin, isn't it? He's got
a couple of other tokens that he's reigning in millions and millions on. And so he has done pretty well in life, and that's what's led him to believe he's the only one who can make this deal. So he's been put on the spot several times about whether he's being played by Putin, and he says he's aware of that dynamic. And let's see. I think we're going to have to wait till Budapest, aren't we, and see how they play this meeting that's been lined up. They said within a fortnight that Trump will meet Putin again in Budapest, and that Trump said he'll have Zelensky. He'll be in touch with Zelensky. He's not inviting him at the moment.
No.
So
Zelensky says he's happy to go if he's asked. Let's talk about.
I don't think he's thrilled, but he's happy. He's happy to go.
Let's talk about the other war that Donald Trump's trying to end. He's in a slightly advanced position on this one. In the same meeting, so when he was taking questions after this bilateral meeting with the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese earlier, he warned that Hamas will be eradicated if the terror group doesn't stick to the ceasefire with Israel.
We have 59 countries that agreed to the deal. We have a peace in the Middle East for the first time ever. We made a deal with Hamas that, they're going to be very good, they're going to behave, they're going to be nice, and if they're not, we're going to go and we're going to eradicate them if we have to. They'll be eradicated, and they know that. So they went in, they got very rambunctious, and they did things that they shouldn't be doing. And if they keep doing it, then we're going to go in and straighten it out, and it'll happen very quickly and pretty violently, unfortunately.
There you go, Donald Trump there talking about fighting Hamas in Gaza. I mean, what's he talking about there? Is he talking about sending in Israeli troops? Is he talking about sending in US troops? I mean, what are we talking about here, David?
Actually, he was asked for clarification what he meant by we will go in. And he said that did not mean the US would go in. It did not mean American boots on the ground. He strongly suggested it would mean Israeli boots on the ground, I think. But he was also referring to these 50 plus countries who he said were backing the deal, and suggesting that he wouldn't have much trouble rounding up some troops from some of them. So again, Trump knows that he's got to keep enormous pressure, actually on both sides, to stick to this ceasefire deal that it's pretty fragile. As you may know, dozens of people were killed over the weekend by Israeli fire. Two Israeli troops were killed near in the south of Gaza. These have been blamed on by Trump was rather generously blaming rebels for the violence on the Palestinian side and suggesting that it had nothing to do with the Hamas leadership, as Hamas itself has said, it's nothing to do with us. We're not actually in touch with whoever's running the show in the very south of Gaza. So at the moment, Trump is saying the ceasefire is holding, the deal is still on, but at the same time, he's trying to hold the Hamas feet to the fire by making these dire threats.
Yeah, the President's Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are back in the region. And I understand that J.D. Vance is in Israel and will meet with the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu tomorrow. I mean, presumably there will be discussions around this ceasefire and the best way forward.
Well, there are a number of loose ends. Of course, Hamas was supposed to have returned all the deceased hostages by now, and they've pleaded that they can't get to the locations easily, and they need a lot more time. Israel thinks that they're playing for time, and they're not serious. And equally, there's no sign of Hamas disarming. Quite the opposite. They've been going around carrying out reprisal killings, dressed up as executions, of course, since the Israeli partial withdrawal. So it's a really tense and fragile situation, and Trump's basically thrown his top people back into the region to try and keep the show on the road.
Yeah. Let's divert our attention to a funny moment during the president's meeting with the Australian PM when a reporter reveals to Donald Trump that Australia's ambassador to the US has criticised him in the past. Let's have a listen.
Have you had any concerns with this administration, with its stance on Palestine, climate change, or even things the ambassador said about you in the past, the Australian ambassador?
I don't know anything about him. I mean, if he said bad, then maybe he'll like to apologize. I really don't know. Did an ambassador say something bad about him? Don't tell me. I don't. Where is he? Is he still working for you?
Yeah.
You said bad?
Before I took this position, Mr. President.
I don't like you either. I don't, and I probably never will. Go ahead.
The ambassador in the room, of course. Was that a tongue-in-cheek moment, or was Trump being serious there, David?
Oh, he's being absolutely serious because I think he remembered who he was dealing with, because the ambassador is the former Prime Minister, Kevin Rudd, who's had a very long-running hostility towards Trump. He made a number of posts in 2020 calling, one of them called Trump the most destructive president in history. And when he was announced as ambassador, I believe Trump said words to the effect that I don't think he'll be ambassador long. And so, but Australia stood by him, unlike Boris Johnson, back when our former ambassador, now Lord Darragh, came under attack from the Trump administration. Yes. For when private cables were released from his communications back to London, pointing out what he genuinely thought of the Trump administration. Well, in that case, of course, the ambassador had to go. But in this case, Australia stood by its ambassador, and there he was sitting opposite Trump during that exchange. And the bit you couldn't quite hear was Rudd trying to make nice and say that was before I took this position, but that's when Trump said, "I don't like you either."
Well, I mean, apparently half an hour later, he apologised to the president. That's a report that I'm reading now, leaning over the table to say sorry to the man he called a village idiot 4 years ago. I mean, orcs can be used to describe that. Yeah, I wonder if those guffaws from the White House audience were just sort of awkward guffaws.
Yes, they came to discuss a deal which is called AUKUS, and it ended up being rather awkward. So.
Very good. David Charter, available for hire weddings, bar mitzvahs, etc. David, always great to speak to you. Thank you. David Charter is the US Assistant Editor for The Times. You can read David's work at thetimes.com and in the paper, and of course the work of the extended team based for The Times and The Sunday Times out in the US.